Everybody to the definitive UFO news show where we dig into the biggest UFO headlines to fight for disclosure and the push for transparency. This isn't just news, it's a real discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unanswered questions in the search for the truth. No political spin, no biased narratives, just the facts and the analysis, and yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. Guess what? It's time to dig in. Let's go ahead and take a look at this here. And we had the task force hearing restoring public trust through UAP transparency and whistleblower protection that happened earlier today. And that's kind of what we're going to go ahead and talk about here. Let me make sure that everything is live. I am not seeing a couple things I need to see. Okay. All right, yeah. So we're good. We're good. Okay. So yes, we had the hearing today, and we went into it like, okay, is it a nothing burger? What is it? What are we expecting? And I was pleasantly surprised by the end of what we saw here. Right. So let me go ahead and say what's up to everybody in the chat. Actually, for some reason, I can't see my chat, so I'm gonna refresh this real. All right, I think we're good now. Let me check the chat. And there we go. Okay, yes, we do. Okay. All right, I see everybody out there. Let me go ahead and say what's up to Polly Rodderman. Thanks for coming in. Kitty Cattywack as well. Appreciate you showing on up. We have Mel WD40. Thank you so much for coming on in here. We have Magneticus Attractus as well. Thanks for coming in, sir. And Super Crazy Movie Geek. No political spin. Oh, well. Yeah, we keep the politics out of it. Let's see. Who else is here? Wayne. Appreciate you coming on in, Wayne. And let's see. All right, yeah. So, new UFO video was released at the hearing. I thought that was pretty amazing. We're going to kind of dive in just real quickly. In and out. You guys were here with this earlier, so we're not going to hold you for too long. And we just want to make sure that we recap some of the highlights from tonight. Let me go ahead and bring up my slides here. As we get ready to get into it here, Definitive UFO News Show, we have a phone number here. We always do this beginning of every show. Go ahead and put in your phone, 856-843-3444, or that's 856 the DIGG outside the United States. Dial 001 first, then 856-843-3444 or 001-856 the DIGG. We'd appreciate you giving us a call, giving us your UFO stories, just giving us anything. Call, like I said, I always say you can call just to say hello. That's a cool thing to do. It's a nice thing to do. Consider doing that as we get a little further into the show here. We have memberships available. We do have a lot of members out there. And let me see if I need to bring up my list here. Memberships currently, Maggie M10, Leanne Bridges, D. Nunley, The Beekeeper, Polly Rodderman, Miss Catherine Jones, Deb from Sacramento, Wes Decker, Ann Joanne, Emperor Penguin, Frankie B, Amy, Laura Dominguez, Moody Mungle, Mel WD40, President Zaddy, Lulu Bell, Richard Minnick, Archon Jackpot, Matt Hector, Eternity Eternal, Thirsty, Deb D, Twiggy, Poncho Zork, and T-Bone. We do appreciate what you do here for the show. You help us pay all the subscription fees and everything we need to do to raise the bar. So thank you for that. As we get ready to go into here, let's take a look. What do we have? All right, UFO hearing 9/9/25. That was today. That was this morning. If you were here, you tuned into what I think is probably the best UFO hearing so far when we talk about information, things that were said. Um, George Knapp being on that panel, I think, was really the highlight. If you missed it, we do have the full hearing right here on the channel, so you can go back and watch that in full. We're going to show a couple clips from the hearing, some of the things that stood out to me, and kind of also go into the video that they showed today. I have a lot of feelings about it because I think the implications of what that video is and what that video means, I think, are huge. And I don't know if everybody has thought about this. I don't know if I'm really jumping the gun as of yet. Really, I usually don't get into it this soon. I like to sit on it, see what develops, and go from there. But being that this video, apparently, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, came out through Congress, then I think that's a pretty big deal. They were the ones to actually bring it forward. So if that's the case, if that's the truth, then there's a strong chain of custody there. I think Rep. Burleson was given the video through what channels, right? I guess would be the next question, to try to figure out if it was some random guy on the street that kind of just gave it to him, because Rep. Burleson is also the individual that about 2 months ago said he had talked to some person that told him that the Tic Tac was Lockheed Martin as well. So is this the same person? Is this coming from the same group of people? I hope not, right? I really want this to be authentic. And if it is, I think the implications go deep. We're going to make sure to get into that and a lot more. So let's go ahead and take a look here and see, what did everybody think about the hearing? Most of you that are here now were here for the hearing. I would like to know, what was your take on what you saw today before we actually get into the show. I would love to hear what you guys thought about that. Also, Polly Riderman has the right idea. Please hit the like button. Whether you're here live, lurking, or on team replay, please consider hitting that like button. Let's get this thing out there. The conversation is going to be had in a lot of different places. We're having it the way we have it right here on the Social Dig. So we'll be getting into that, plus a lot more. I would love to, once again, to hear, what was your thoughts? What did you think about the hearing? I'm going to wait a couple seconds, see if I can get anyone to post their thought here, and we'll go ahead and bring that up. And once again, we talked before the hearing, and I said, don't go into it with high expectations, because generally, when you do that, you walk away from it as if, it didn't meet your standards, right? And so when a lot of people do that, they call it a nothing burger. They walk away from it disappointed, or we didn't get shown anything, no further confirmation. So coming into it with lower expectations, I think, really allowed a lot of us who did that to walk away with more than probably other people walked away from this. You're probably going to hear shows or see shows out there where some people are like, oh, it was nothing. And hopefully you hear a lot of people that are going to talk about what we talk about here tonight, because I think if you read between the lines, then I think you can pick up some of the goodies that were there, and some of the concerning things as well, right? Because I think it, struck a chord with me. I became concerned for a moment there, and we'll talk about why in a moment here. Let me go ahead and see. Polly Rotterman thought it was great. I think it was great. The questions were simple but important, and the witnesses stand by their stories. Way to go. Another step forward. And I got to admit, I'm not a government is going to disclose type of guy, right? But I felt okay with the results, right? I didn't feel like it was a waste of time. Some of the Congress members said some key things that address some of the concerns that I've had in the last few shows. So we're going to talk about that as well. If you have been here and you watched the last few shows we've done here, we did the alien invasion show. We did the what in the world is Congress doing with the whistleblower information show, and we did a few other shows as well. So make sure you hop in our archive. It's going to tie into what we talk about here tonight. Polly says the Yemen video was impressive. Yes, I agree. We'll be looking at all that here. Let me see. Mel W40 says that video was cool, too cool. I agree with you there. And it's all about, once again, right? Because nobody wants to jump the gun and go all in with this video because we don't know much about it. We know it was shown at the congressional hearing. We don't know where it came from. We don't know what the origins are, and I'm sure that'll be something that people will be looking into. I'm sure Mick West is taking a crack at this right now, attempting to debunk it. So we'll obviously wait for Mick West's explanation of what it is that we're seeing and why it isn't UFOs, right? Because that's what Mick West is great at doing, telling us why it isn't UFOs. And it's cool because that's a part of the conversation that we definitely need to have. If it isn't, right? If it's explainable, let's explain it, right? Pretty simple. If it's explainable, let's explain it. That way we can set it aside, move forward. But as it stands, it appears that potentially this is the real deal. And I don't see a world where we're sitting in a congressional hearing where the witnesses are under oath and then Congress brings forth a video that doesn't add up. I just don't see a world where that exists. So there were a few things about the hearing that I wanted to get into first before we take a look at the video. Rep Luna is, and we talked about this in one of the previous shows that we did about Congress. What are they doing with the information? My big question was, okay, you've heard from all these whistleblowers. How many other hearings do you need to have before you act on the information that you've been given? That was my question, right? Literally a couple shows ago, and I think some of those questions were answered tonight, at least for now, right? Because you can say anything, but action speaks louder than words. So we'll need to see the actions, but they did verbally address some of the things that we talked about. I'm going to start off with how awesome Rep Luna was with her part of her opening statement. This is how she came out, and I felt really good about this. I was like, okay, we might be looking at something here. If we're starting out like this, and we still have George Knapp to hear from, and some of these other witnesses I was not familiar with, this is how the whole party got started. Let's take a look. The video playing.
That you see that we take such great courage to come forward, and we acknowledge that, and I hope that you see that we are...
Welcome to the hearing regarding UAP disclosures.
Takes such great courage to come forward, and we acknowledge that, and I hope that you see that we are taking that seriously. And so very thankful for what you're doing today. I'm also very thankful for previous witnesses that have come forward. I see Matthew Brown in the audience. He courageously stepped forward and...
The hearing regarding UAP disclosures. For too long, the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomena, commonly known as UAPs, has been shrouded in secrecy, stigma, and in some cases, outright dismissal. Today, I want to state clearly that this is not science fiction or creating speculation. This is about national security, government accountability, and the American people's right to the truth. I've spoken now to a number of whistleblowers from the military, to include the infamous Eglin Air Force Base incident that occurred when myself and former Representative Matt Gaetz, as well as Representative Burchett, followed up on a lead from multiple active duty Air Force pilot whistleblowers that alleged that the United States Air Force was covering up UAP activity at Eglin Air Force Base. We have heard from a number of whistleblowers, specifically military pilots, that the reason for not coming forward publicly is out of fear that speaking out would cost them their flight status and potentially their careers. This is unacceptable. We cannot protect our airspaces if our best trained observers are silenced. We cannot advance science if we refuse to ask questions. And we cannot maintain trust in government if we keep the American people in the dark. Now, Congress has tried to fix this problem. Congress tried to create formal channels through the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, also known as AARO, and the Intelligence Community Inspector General for service members and officials to make disclosures. But the reality, the reports come in are often to brush aside, slow-walked, or met with skepticism rather than serious investigation. Recently, the former AARO director, known as Sean Kilpatrick, attacked our witnesses and members on this committee. It should be noted that he's a documented liar and brings into question what his purpose at AARO really was if it was not to follow up on investigations and disclose his findings to members of Congress. A former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Chris Mellon, described a report published by AARO that found no evidence that any USG investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed any sighting of UAP-represented extraterrestrial technology. As the most error-ridden and unsatisfactory government report I can recall reading during after decades of government service. Mellon further noted that this was a first error report submitted to Congress without the Director of National Intelligence's sign-off and seemingly excluded input from any scholars or experts who have studied or written extensively about this topic, as would normally be in any other case in this field. Mellon determined that this report failed to fulfill the congressional mandate under which it was required, omitted entire agencies with known investigations or activities related to UAPs, and omitted any discussion of efforts to hide classified or unclassified information about UAP.
Okay, so that's how Luna got it started, right? And I felt really good about that, starting off with making a statement saying Sean Kirkpatrick is a documented liar. We've talked about this on this channel as well, right? He said he had nothing to do with UFOs, never looked into the issue before when talking to Stephen Greenstreet, and then Stephen Greenstreet turned right around and showed the video image that showed Sean Kirkpatrick in a hearing in a conference room with Brandon Fugel from Skinwalker Ranch in 2018, being briefed on their findings and some of the activities that were going on Skinwalker Ranch. Sean Kirkpatrick was sitting right there. And I'm sure that's what she's talking about when she says documented liar. But starting out the hearing like that, Rep. Luna, let's give a round of applause. Because I think you got to do that, right? And just because it goes with the clip, she also later in the hearing kind of went a little further, and I want to make sure that we play this here. Let's check this out. Take a look.
She can hide the truth and punish those who speak out. Congress has to keep pushing until the facts, whatever they are, wherever they lead, come to light. I'm going to go to you, Mr. Knapp, first. You've interviewed numerous UAP whistleblowers over the years. Question is, how do you verify their claims before deciding they're credible enough to report on?
It's a combination of factors. First, you check their credentials. Did they really serve where they said they did, and did they work where they said they did? Are there any other witnesses? Is there visual proof, film, footage, things of that sort? You ask the people around them that know them, that used to work with them, if they're credible people. That's one way. You know, I think about AARO, the organization that this body created to deal with witnesses and whistleblowers. I hope I'm not taking too much of your time here, but they invited people to come forward, service members who saw things and had experiences. And I can tell you that the people that I have talked to who went through that are deeply disappointed. There was a guy named Bob Jacobs who was a lieutenant attached to Vandenberg in 1964. His unit would record missile tests. They recorded all of them. On one of these particular tests, a UFO comes out of nowhere, zaps what looks like a laser beam at what would have been a nuclear dummy, a nuclear weapon, and disabled it. And he is called into the commander's office. Two guys in suits clip that film footage out that shows the UFO, and he's ordered to never talk about it. He comes forward to Arrow. He heeds the call, thinking he's doing his duty as an American to tell that story, and they completely dismissed him. They made up a story that they had tracked down the original footage, and there was nothing like that in it. Well, there was no original footage. It had been taken away the day the footage was recorded. He's deeply disappointed. People like Bob Salas, who had worked at a nuclear ICBM base, who saw UFOs flying over the base, and these missile silos were taken down. He went to Arrow, too, and was completely disregarded. It almost looks like Arrow operated as a counterintelligence operation to get people to come in, tell their stories, and then discredit all of them. I can't imagine that any whistleblower or witness will ever go to Arrow again because of what happened under the first director, who's now long gone, but still seems to act as the spokesperson for that organization.
And I would say, Madam Chair, maybe at some point we need to really dig deep into Arrow, and I would encourage us.
Oh, I'd be happy to send maybe a subpoena to Mr. Kilpatrick.
That'd be fun.
Send that subpoena right on over. Yes, bring Sean Kirkpatrick in front of Congress under oath and grill him. They understand that he was lying and being disingenuous the time that he was director for Arrow. As George Knapp said, he's out of the position, but he still seems to be the spokesperson. He still has something to say, it seems like, right? And it's obvious disinformation because we know if they looked at all into any of the data and they walked away without coming away with anything, then we know that's disingenuous. What was the statement they gave every time? Arrow has not found any proof of the existence of the extraterrestrial presence. We have no, and a lot of it, I think, is, as we talked about before, I think is them saying things like adversarial, adversaries, drones, that these are drones, right? And I think the question I always had was, okay, why don't they go to the next step and say, okay, you say drones, but are they extraterrestrial drones? Because I think that's the logical next question when you explain a lot of these things that we're capturing away as either adversarial potentially or drones. And as the show goes into it, the title of thumbnail, are we at war with UFOs? Because we did a show a few months back or a month or two back talking about does the government or governments around the world look at the UFO presence as adversarial? Right? Because if so, then when Arrow makes statements like adversarial tech, are they talking about the extraterrestrial presence when they say that? Because as we've shown, there are incidents where you could potentially consider actions that have been taken by either us, meaning the military, U.S. military, or by the extraterrestrials themselves as something you could consider adversarial. If there's a threat there and they displayed a threat to you or have taken action on you at some point, or even if you've taken action on them, does that then put them in the same boat as China and Russia, adversaries, right? Someone we got to keep an eye on, because it would make sense why the governments don't say much about the extraterrestrial presence, because it isn't just that they're here. It's just maybe they're here and they've displayed adversarial, abilities. Then it makes sense when they make statements like, this is adversarial, right? And if you don't probe any more than that, they could literally be talking about anybody or anyone or anything that they consider to be, opponents of the United States. and an extraterrestrial threat that has displayed aggression, you would think that would be put in an adversarial category, right? So when they say adversarial, they say drones. No one takes the next step to say, are these extraterrestrial drones? Because in a lot of cases, it feels like a lot of the things that we do see are likely unmanned craft, right? And if they're not from here, could, using the state of mind that we have here on Earth, would those be considered drones? Would we call them drones? They're unmanned craft. The things that we have that are unmanned, we call them drones. Not just quadcopter drones, but like the Reaper drones as well, right? The ones that look like planes. We call them drones because they're unmanned aerial systems, right? So are they saying it without saying it? You have to ask yourself that. Is that going to be, what Sean Kirkpatrick would kind of allude to if called in for subpoena? And I can't wait for that. That's going to be a beautiful, if that's the next thing cooking, I'm on board for that. And I'm going to hang on every word that's said because, it's obvious that they know that there was, as far as all the reports from whistleblowers go, that, hey, they didn't even want to go into Arrow and give the information because of how previous whistleblowers have been treated by Arrow. George Knapp tells a story right there about the missile test that was done back in the 60s where they shot the missile off. They had a cameraman that was like 5-10 miles away, and he's filming the whole thing. So he has the missile traversing across the sky, and then all of a sudden a UFO comes into frame and shoots a laser at the thing on a few different angles, and then it tumbles back to Earth, the warhead. So if that's brought to Arrow and they kind of brush this guy off and they're brushing off all the other whistleblowers, then what's the purpose? They're brushing off the whistleblowers. They're unwilling to take in the information or do anything with the information. But then they'll make a statement like, we found no evidence of the extraterrestrial presence or the extraterrestrial threat. So that would probably mean that, yeah, we're looking at some sort of misinformation situation when it comes to Arrow. And so that means, Sean Kirkpatrick, guess what? Your time is coming up, buddy. You're going to have to take a seat. And you're going to have to answer some questions, man, under oath. I don't know if he's been under oath. I'm trying to think here. I know he sat in front of Senator Gillibrand in a congressional sort of setting. I don't know if that was under oath, but if it was, obviously lying under oath is perjury. So I don't know what comes out of that. We'll see. And maybe we still have to grant him immunity, right? Along with everybody else. Maybe he falls under that umbrella. I don't know. But definitely he's somebody you want to bring to the table, right? George Knapp being there. Round of applause for George Knapp. Knew coming into the hearing that if there was going to be light or anything that we were able to walk away from, it was going to be George Knapp, because I knew he was not going to miss the opportunity to hit every single important point that needed to be hit on this stage. And he did. If you watch the full hearing, you will see George Knapp explaining all sorts of historic information, also giving some of his thoughts based on his career as a journalist, where some of the secrets might be. I know he mentioned a name during the hearing, Glenn Gaffney, CIA. Who's Glenn Gaffney? Maybe we need to look into that. Who's Glenn Gaffney? He told specifically, one of the Congress members who was questioning him to take a look at Glenn Gaffney, CIA. He said that you'll want to look at that. He didn't really elaborate. So we'll need to take a look and see what he meant by that. But he was there to do exactly what he did. And I'm totally not disappointed with George Knapp being on that panel. I don't know if anyone could do it any better as far as making sure that you walked away from that hearing with the information, the pertinent information, the information you should be focused on and not all the other stuff, right? So I really feel good about that. George Knapp did not disappoint. And you had great testimony from everyone. I'm not gonna say that you didn't, but George Knapp was definitely the shining star here. Let me see, what did we have anything for George Knapp here? This was one thing that I heard. I want to play this first. This is the Congress, and I think coming to an understanding, or at least for us understanding that maybe they understand what the idea of proof is. When I'm hearing them talk, it sounds more and more like they're speaking our language, which is a great thing, right? Because it sounds like they know what they're talking about. This is what they said. Check it out.
The silver bullet at the moment. But when you look back through the hearing and the evidence that's been presented, if you're going to point the American people to one piece of evidence to start their journey on this topic, what would you suggest, sir?
One piece of evidence, I would start with this hearing, in the first hearing. There is no evidence.
But is there a specific, exactly, but is there a specific evidence or footage or document that you think lends extreme credibility to what we're discussing today?
I would say this new video we're seeing today is exceptional evidence that we're dealing with something.
With the kinetic?
Yes.
Mr. Wiggins?
Sir, I'd have to say that if just the average person here in America looked at absolutely everything that has come across television, the internet, etc., you can't tell yourself that 100% of what's being recorded is fake or false. You have to, at some point, understand that there's something else out there.
That's true. That's just a true statement, right? You got to understand, let's start at the basic beginning. As I always say, we're sitting on a rock right now as we speak, doing this show live from the third rock from the sun, right? We're sitting on a rock, floating in infinite space, and we are rotating or orbiting a ball of fire. Like, let's start there. That sounds crazy and wild, right? But it's what we know. Once again, 60-foot lizards walk on this same planet that we're walking on. That sounds wild, but we have the proof. We know that that was something that happened on this planet. Crazy, right? When you think about what we know about things today, as far as in our current, the animals and things that we are associated with today. Now, we have signs of that whole prehistoric civilization, or if you want to call it that, a world, right? Dinosaurs, big lizards, essentially. We still have a few of those left over here. So we know what happened, but it's bananas, and people just need to wrap their mind around that so you can understand that means you can't close your mind off to what the possibilities are out there. And we have proof, and they dropped proof, which we'll get to the video here shortly and kind of talk about that. But there's all sorts of different historical UFO stories that we talk about. Once again, the 5 times that I've considered maybe extraterrestrials were reaching out for contact. A lot of compelling encounters. where beings have shown themselves, gotten out of the craft, walked out of the craft, right? And so it's just, I think this was a great step. I know during the show, when we were watching this earlier, someone said, you know, hey, they're telling us things we already know. And I said, you know what? It's not for us. It's not for the UFO community. This UFO hearing was not for the UFO community. This was for the rest of the world. So once again, when you have the average Joe who is just doing his daily thing that he does, and he sees that Congress has had another UFO hearing, and in this hearing, you have the best potential person you could have there, George Knapp, giving you the history and connecting a lot of the dots for you. It's beneficial to the people outside of this community. We know a lot of most of the stuff. 90% of, you know, what there is to know that's out there, we know in this community. So this isn't for us. You know, if we could get something like we did get, which is the video, that was the thing that we didn't have coming into this. So that's the thing we get to walk away from this hearing and say, that was, aside from the awesome testimony, the video was something that was very tangible and allowed us to move forward a little bit. And we're going to talk about how, in what ways that is. Because I think there's a few different ways this video release moves the conversation. But once again, George Knapp stepped to the plate. And he talked about particularly information that he received while going to Russia. So Russia used to be the United Soviet Socialist Republic, something like that, right? USSR. And they took over a lot of different countries, right? A lot of Europe was made up as the USSR. And when they dissolved back in the 80s, late 80s, when I think it was Gorbachev, right? Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan, they dissolved the USSR, and George Knapp was able to go into Russia at that time and get some documents that he brought forward. So he's going to kind of talk to that. And then there's a piece of this that I think is quite concerning. So let's take a look real quick and we'll talk about it.
Follow the paper trail of documents that they wrote before the military got wise and realized that FOIA really exists and changed their tune and not put things in writing. It spells it out pretty clearly. I'll go refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention to Representative Burleson is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs. And they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone. No country in the world wants to say and admit that these objects are flying around in our airspace and there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, who wants to say that? The U.S. certainly doesn't. The Russians didn't either.
George Knapp, ladies and gentlemen. Saying the important things 40 times in the documents that he had. I'm sure it's way more than this. Especially, I think he got the data in 93, right? So we're talking about that was over 30 years ago. Yeah, 32 years ago. And what's happened since then? Surely a lot. Jeremy Corbell has talked about our military firing on these things. I think the video that they released kind of shows that as well. George Knapp has documents where the Russians had to fire on these things 40 different times. Why? Was it just, to see if they could take one down, or were these things doing things that presented a threat, right? Where they were the only thing they were able to do in that situation was to fire on these things. So that's where we kind of get into this other part of the conversation, because as we talked about the last few shows, for one, alien invasion, Three-Eye Atlas coming, all this stuff, right? We looked at some cases where UFOs have directly unalived human beings. We talked about the inadvertent negative effects from just being in proximity to a UFO. We talk about radiation, things like that, right? Inadvertent. Okay, maybe the aliens don't know that if we get too close to their craft, that we may end up getting sick from that, right? Or maybe they do know. So is it inadvertent? Maybe it is. We'll just call it inadvertent, right? We'll just put that in that category, as we talked about the other day. But then that means there's another side too, where we also talked about cases where it was deliberate. It seemed to be deliberate. And so when you get a video like the one that just came out that we'll be looking at here in just a couple moments, when you look at a video like this, where they come out and say, this is, a Q-180 or Q-170 Reaper drone firing a Hellfire missile at a UFO, is what they showed in this video. If you take that, you take the report that George Knapp got out of Russia in the paperwork that showed they fired on things over 40 times. You know the infamous encounter in Turkey with the pilot that had a dog fight with a UFO. And you got to ask yourself, is the U.S. military, or U.S. military plus other governments and powers around the world, at war with UFOs, if they've had some sort of back and forth thing? Because if so, it would make sense. The clip that we watched from Tom DeLonge on the other show, which actually I still have it here, I'm going to play it, where he talks about an unprovoked, essentially, event with the UFO. And so if you put all this in context now with the video that came out today, and then the statement George Knapp just made there about the Russia documents and their interactions with UFOs, then does the Tom DeLonge video make more sense on why they would have been targeted unprovoked? Because maybe there's this back and forth thing going on, and has been since Roswell or who knows when. And this would obviously be one of, if this is the case, which it sounds like it is, and the video says that it is, that potentially this is one of the reasons why the government is reluctant, aside from the other reasons, that this may be an additional reason why the governments are reluctant to talk about UFOs or even bring it up, right? And I was thinking about this because you have all branches of the government now. Jeffrey Nusatelli, who testified today, is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. But as we talked about prior, who else from the Air Force has come out and talked about this? No one. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, we have all these branches. We have Navy, Air Force, Marines, Army. And if we were talking about adversarial threats, right? The Marines, the Navy, they're out patrolling the oceans, making sure coastlines are safe. We got the Army, the Marines, right? These are ground troops, essentially. And we don't have a ground threat here in the United States as far as invasion, I would hope. It would appear to be that we don't really have a worry about adversaries being able to come on the mainland of the United States. So the only threats that we have are from the air, right? Which would be the relegated to the Air Force, Space Force, NORAD. And is this why they are completely silent on the matter? Because they're in an active conflict with whatever these are. That makes sense. It makes total sense, and it even adds validity if this video that comes out that has been released today, if this video is deemed to be authentic, then it pretty much brings it home that maybe they're fully aware, which we know they are fully aware of the alien presence, but that they're actively engaged in some sort of adversarial back and forth with these things, which would definitely not be something you would want to tell the public, because as you'll see in the video, there probably isn't much that we can do. And I think it also brings home the fact of the things that we've already thought about, you know, just thinking about these things being so advanced that if as far as weaponry goes, that we probably wouldn't have a chance against these guys, right? And that's just been a thought. But I think the video release illustrates that fact. And so that's why I walk away from this hearing saying it was, you know, with lower expectations, obviously, and come out of it saying, you know what? This is probably the biggest, the most momentous UFO hearing that we've had so far. And I thought about it. I'm not blowing this out of perspective. I'm just connecting the dots here on what makes sense. And I think we walk away from this open to the idea that there may be some sort of adversarial element to this. And then that makes more sense now when you go back and look at the New Jersey drone situation. So what was that? Was that a standoff? Is there something in New Jersey that we aren't aware of, right? And there was some sort of stalemate where they're like, okay, we're drawing the line in the sand. We're going to just sit here every day for 2 months straight until you XYZ, right? That starts to also bring up thoughts of the whole Eisenhower thing now. It's like, okay, well, is there some sort of contact, or has there been, between these things and then government, and they're not agreeing on some things? Because when they hover over nuclear sites and they do it all over the world, well, that's saying something. And so is that the agreement? And so because we're not abiding to that, is this why there's this adversarial tension there? We're going to look at the video. It's going to blow you away. If you haven't, I'm sure you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, it is mind-blowing. And we're going to end up watching that here in just a minute. We are almost there. Let me, I want to play this here. This is something Rep. Burleson talked about here during the hearing. Let's check this out.
Nusatelli. When you heard the testimony of Mr. Knapp talking about these missiles were shut down or turned on in Russia, does that remind you, when you hear these stories, it's got to remind you of the event that happened on your base?
Absolutely. There are many accounts of incursions of this type taking place. I believe in the 60s we had a similar incursion in New England, and same thing happened. There were these objects coming over the base at low altitude, 200 feet over the base security police, and they were scrambling fighters, and then the objects would just fly off, and that went on for weeks. So the historical record has laid out that there's a pattern, that our installations are visited by these craft. You know, they come in and do whatever they're doing, and then they leave. And we don't know how to respond. We don't know how to protect the installation. So that's why we're here.
When you first heard, and we're having to report on these incidents that were being witnessed by other individuals, did you believe them? Did you yourself believe it would be true until you saw it?
Yeah, these are people I've worked with for years, deployed with. You know, I was in some of their weddings. These are people that I worked with every day of my life. Usually when the events were occurring, we were all together. You know, there'd be 40, 60, 100 people on duty during these encounters.
Really?
Yeah.
All seeing it at the same time?
Yes, these encounters were playing out while we were on duty, and we were responding and investigating in real time as they occurred.
And as you said, the importance of your operation was highly important because they said it's the most important in 25 years, the research that you were conducting.
For that particular launch, we had 500 Air Force police officers guarding the launch. 500 people. It was that critical.
Wow.
But had this thing showed up, we wouldn't have been able to do anything to prevent it showing up.
Real quickly, can you just redescribe size and whether or not you heard anything? It was, how big, wise?
The two square objects were at least as large as a football field. The second encounter, they think it was much larger than a football field. We're talking like flying buildings. The object I saw was about 30 feet in diameter.
And to confirm, you were not the only person that saw this.
Correct.
I think I was also told that there was also reports of this in a police blotter in the area. Can you confirm that?
Yes, that's the documentation that I maintained from the original event and turned into Arrow and the FBI.
Okay. Do you have any more, Burleson?
No, Madam Chair, I just want to reiterate to the American people that if you're frustrated, so are we. We're extremely frustrated. We've been, the 2-3 years. I can only imagine how frustrated Mr. Knapp is or Danny Sheehan is, and the amount of time that you guys have poured into this to try to get answers. I mean, Masson is back there. He's been pouring to try to get answers into this. I hope that you all see that we're committed to this, and we're going to be scrappy about it. We may not have the direct authority, but I can assure you, Representative Luna is about as scrappy as it gets. I wouldn't want to scrap with her. But that being said, I think that if the American people want to see answers, we need to action. We've had the hearings. It's time to take action. It's time that we pass Tim Burchett's Whistleblower Act. It's time that we pass the UAP Disclosure Act. And I think that we've had a lot of talk about this. It's time for action.
Thank you, Burleson.
And I'd like to add my own round of applause to that, right? Because I think we do need action. It's all about action at this point, right? As he said, and we talked about this on the last couple shows, they have all the information that they need to go and take the next step and go to these contractors and go start knocking on some doors. So I'm at least glad to walk away hearing someone on the Congress side say what he just said right there, because I agree. I've been saying this the whole time. You have all the information. Now it's time for action, right? But with that being said, are we still looking at a situation where it's being uncovered that we might actually be dealing with something adversarial, that we might actually be in a current conflict with these things? And the video, which depicts us engaging with one of these things, you have to ask yourself, what happened before that video? Was there something that prompted the response, that sort of response? Did one of these things do something that prompted us to fire on one of these things. That's I don't know if that comes out, right? Hopefully it does as people look further into where this video came from, when it happened, the sources. And I think if we go by the clip, I think it said October 30th of 2024 is the date that I saw. So if that's true, right, that would be right before the drone situation, right? That'd be maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the drone incursion, about a week or two before the last UFO hearing, which happened, I think, on November 13th of 2024. So you'd be talking like 2 weeks after this incident that we're going to watch on video. 2 weeks later, we have the hearing. 5 days after that, we have the first drone situation. So we're talking about 18, 19 days, 3 weeks between the incident that we're going to see on video and then drones all over New Jersey. Are those two things connected? I don't know. Is this a reason why none of the administrations could explain or want to explain what it was that was going on or what we were dealing with? I don't know, right? I can just say that I think the Congress or whoever put this video out may have inadvertently exposed the fact that not only are these UFOs real, but we're having situations where we are firing rockets on it. And think about this. And that's why I asked, what happened before the video? Because they've been here all this time. We've had the ability to, we've had fighter jets with weapons on them for the last 80 years or more, actually more. And so you got to ask, it's about 100 years. You got to ask yourself then, if that incident that we're going to watch just happened less than a year ago, there had to be other instances where we engaged them or they engaged us. And so what led us to fire on them in this instance? When the rule, as George Knapp stated, as far as Russia goes, was, hey, don't fire on these things. So in what situation, knowing that likely you can't do anything to these things, in what situation causes you current day to fire on these things? And is it because they did something first? So anyone who missed it, Tom DeLonge tells this story. And once again, I don't know what people have against Tom DeLonge, but he tells a story of a time when UFOs were causing havoc over in Sicily. They were shooting, I guess, energy beams or energy weapons is what he was saying, and catching houses on fire. They go investigate, and the UFOs are kind of aggressive and actually shoot at them, shooting at us, the humans, unprovoked, apparently, if what he says is the whole story. So for anyone who didn't get to see the last show, I want you to see this clip so you understand what I'm talking about. This is Tom DeLonge probably 4 or 5 years ago when this interview came out. But this is what he said on the Steve-O podcast. Once again, let's take a look at it.
We got to kind of confront it regardless, but it's very real. It's insanely bigger than you think it is. It's not just a few things in the sky. It's very, very big. I got brought over to Italy. Some dudes with Italian intelligence in Vatican and UN, they were all there, went to military base, had these briefings, and they showed me a map of the Mediterranean. And what was happening is on the coast of Sicily, all these like apartments were like catching on fire. Like a microwave, boom, some books, boom, like the fucking couch, boom. And so the government came in and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? So they quarantine the area, get everyone to leave, and they're going, why are things catching on fire? They detected these energy beams, energy weapons or something that were coming off of the way out in the ocean in the Mediterranean. So this dude gets he was a colonel at the time, and he was in charge. Oh, what they looked out and saw were UFOs. Were out in the ocean fucking around. So the head of the UFO program and the head of the Italian Navy SEALs get on an unmarked civilian helicopter and just fly out to go see what's going on out there. As they're flying, a UFO pops out of the ocean and shoots their fucking helicopter down. I have the documents on the Italian intelligence letterhead. I talked to the two dudes I was in the meeting with that were on the fucking helicopter. I have pictures of the helicopter being chased by the UFO and all the damage that was done to it with some type of microwave weapon or something. And what they found out was that there were airplanes and other helicopters kind of in the area, but the UFO knew that those dudes were looking for him.
And so when you listen to that and you put everything into context, right? With the video that we're about to watch here of this UFO being fired on by human beings, by our military, you got to ask yourself, has this been a back and forth thing going on this whole time? Because people will sit up and they'll say they haven't done anything to us so far. Well, as far as we know, right? They abduct human beings as far as we understand. So is it so far off to think that there are other things going on, right? Especially when the government sits up and they want to be tight-lipped and we're like, you should just be able to tell us that there is an extraterrestrial presence. You don't need to tell us about the things you're working on. You can just tell us, hey, aliens are here, X, Y, Z. But this would be a reason why something that would seem so simple, they wouldn't be able to do, because there's more to the story. Yes, they're here. Yes, there's this unexplainable presence here. And by the way, we're kind of going back and forth with them. And we can't do anything to them. I think that is the missing piece of the puzzle. I think that's why it just doesn't make sense to a lot of us, because we're like, hey, you should just be able to tell us that part, the part that they're here, and then, hey, let's move on and figure this out. But this would make sense why something that simple wouldn't be able to take place, aside from the repercussions, the backlash from the people and the uproar. Besides that, I think admitting that we're in a losing battle with these things is definitely something that they'll never, ever, ever, ever want to say. They wouldn't want to admit any other adversary had the upper hand on us, right? So if these UFOs or this extraterrestrial presence also falls in that adversarial category, then it would make sense why they wouldn't want to let us or lead us on to the advantages that they may have over us. So just coming from a whole war mind state. And then just think about how everything happened with the drone thing, man. I just keep going back to that because it's baffling how they handled it. Both administrations did the same thing with it, dropped the ball. And it's like, why? And maybe they were just in total shock that there was a stand like that being taken, where these things were like, okay, we're going to sit up here for 2 months straight. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to be right here for 2 months straight. And if there's an adversarial element to that, wouldn't that worry you that these things that you've been going back and forth with have decided to now just sit on top of a city day in, day out for 2 months straight? I think that would be something, they'd probably be shaking in their boots about behind the scenes. It's just something to think about. So with that being said, let's get into, well, actually, I'm going to show the video, but I do want to cover a couple other things. Some things I did like. I like Borland. I felt he was very outspoken, right? He seemed to be really concerned about being charged with the Espionage Act and needing immunity and wanting to talk or say some things in a skiff. And based on his concerns, I can understand that. Rep. Moskowitz said we need to protect the whistleblowers because Spielberger stated that the whistleblowers depend on protection from the same groups that are actually targeting them, right? So it doesn't make sense to go to a group to report what you know or whistleblow, and that same group was really nice, actually, right? It was done in a joking manner, but I still think that the effect was there, right? Because we know Van Allen radiation belt, if it is what it's believed to be, that would mean potentially that it would be hard for us to leave Earth and go to the moon, right? So it goes into the whole did we go to the moon conversation. So it was kind of, cute that someone asked that question during the hearing. No one gave an answer on it because obviously none of the people sitting there could speak from a place of knowledge. It'd just be speculation. So no one commented on it, but I thought it was funny that it was brought up. And another question, Rep. Perry asked, would they test top secret projects in front of someone who didn't have the clearance? He asked that of Nusatelli, who had the Vandenberg, who, experienced the Vandenberg UFO, the thing that was big as a football field. And the representative was saying this in a way saying, hey, they would never just, test this on base without knowing if, the people that were able to view this had clearance or not, right? Like they would never do that, right? And I thought that was a great point. And it's something that we've talked about as well. They would never test stuff like this in front of the general public, let alone someone in the military that didn't have the clearance. So it just that part of the conversation just takes us back to is this man-made? Is some of the stuff we're seeing man-made? And it's just likely not, as we've talked about a million times here. So I wanted to make sure we covered all that. That's what I felt about the hearing so far. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the video that they showed here. Hopefully it'll play for us. I was blown away by the video, just of what it meant. So if you missed it, we're going to go ahead and take a look at it. I think this is audio where Rep. Burleson is actually explaining what you're seeing in the video. So he's kind of talking over the video and gives you an idea. We'll talk about it more when we come back. Let's take a look.
Takes such great courage to come forward, and we acknowledge that, and I hope that you see that we are taking that seriously. And so very thankful for what you're doing today. I'm also very thankful for previous witnesses that have come forward. I see Matthew Brown in the audience. He courageously stepped forward and was as a witness. I encourage everybody to look and seek his testimony. I want to thank the people that came in our first hearing: Ryan Graves, David Grush, David Fravor, and in our second hearing, Admiral Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, and Mr. Gold, and the many others that have come forward. We hear you, and it's time that we, enough is enough. It's time that we take action. Look, I'm not jumped to the conclusion that I believe that there are, aliens coming from another planet, but I'm open to that. And I think that it's our responsibility, especially when we're seeing that we have a government that is actively blocking information from us. Just last night, I tried to get an amendment onto the National Defense Authorization Act that fit in the germaneness of that bill to have UAP disclosure. And conveniently, it was named non-germane, mostly deemed by staff, not even an elected official. This is the kind of stuff that we repeatedly see. Last year, we were blocked by someone in House administration from being able to receive a full briefing from Arrow. So not an elected official, but someone in staff blocked us. And I've had it. Enough is enough. I want to cue up a video that I've been given. And as before it starts, I'm going to describe, this was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. That you cannot see that drone. And so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does. This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. So, Mr. Knapp, do you have you heard about events like this occurring? And what information might you have?
I have heard about events like this. I have heard about this event. Jeremy Corbell and I talked about it in one of our episodes a while back. We did not have the video, though. There are servers where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public hasn't been allowed to see. Occasionally, some of that stuff gets out in the wild, and it comes our way. It should be going to you. The public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah, what the hell is that? What
Again,
flies like that?
Again, I'm not.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below.
So that video, very epic for me and compelling. Obvious UFO, anomalous object, and they fired on it with the Hellfire missile. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they use a Hellfire missile on the China spy balloon as well, right? It was a whole talk about why spend that much money to bring down a balloon. You could use a thumbtack that cost 5 cents and deflate it, or just something else, right? They used a Hellfire missile for that as well, I believe. Now, the whole thing is that they fired on a UFO. If the date is correct, as recently as October 30th, 2024, the United States of America fired a Hellfire missile on a UFO. Why? Why? If they haven't exhibited any sort of aggression, they seem to be over water. So we know waters are international in most cases once you get so far off the coast. So what would be the reason to fire on it again if it's not exhibiting any sort of threat? You go back to the drone swarm of the naval ships back in 2019. They had the drones just hanging out. The pyramid drone video that Corbell released, and they kind of did nothing, right? They let them sit there. And those you would think that based on the behavior of those, they would have tried to do something to those, right? And they probably did. We probably just didn't get the information on that. But this UFO over open water, looks like the ocean somewhere, probably Pacific or no, it's Yemen, right? It was in Yemen. So regardless, over the ocean it appears, or a sea, and they decided to fire a missile on it. What happened before the video started? What was the reason to make that call? What behavior did it exhibit that called on the military to make that call? And is it the first time? No. Is it the last time? No. Has it happened multiple times? We've had reports of it. So if we're having multiple reports of aggressive actions being taken from either side, whether it's Tom DeLonge talking about a UFO hopping out the water, shooting a helicopter, and going back in the water, that's unprovoked aggression from the presence, the phenomena towards human beings. And then we have video here, which we just watched, which is evidence of aggression of human beings towards whatever the phenomena is. So I think that's evidence of both sides showing aggression towards the other. So does that mean then that we're potentially in a secret sort of conflict with these UFOs? That's more than just conspiracy or speculation. I think the video, if ends up being authentic, brings up all those questions. And then the more you look into it, is if you'll go back in our archive here on this channel and watch the previous shows that we did here on this, the alien invasion threat, the are we at a UFO dead end, all the last shows that we've done here, we've kind of ramped up talking about that, not knowing, obviously, that they were going to release this video today, because I think this video is literally visual proof that this is likely something that's going on. And then when you look at it, it just makes sense that when you look at some of the other actions that we've taken, or non-actions, in the case of New Jersey drones, why we may have taken that stance. And why is it that our governments are acting oblivious to the presence of extraterrestrials? Because we can't stop them. We can't. We shot a Hellfire missile, did nothing. It kept going, and the pieces that blew off of it seemed to stay in sync uniformly with the body of the original craft. That's insane. That shows that this is nothing that we have created, nothing that we have made. And if we had reverse engineered technology in being worked on by a contractor, do you think we would have shot a Hellfire missile at it? Do you think we would have used some of this new tech that we have reverse engineered? If this is as recent as October 30th, 2024, you would assume, especially if this is something behind the scenes that we really weren't supposed to know about, that they would have tested or tried something new on that UFO, right? They just shot a missile at it. So that leads me down more to believe that we probably have not reverse engineered UFO tech the way some people think. It makes sense. That wasn't done on the world stage. They could have shot anything at this thing, right? So you have to start asking the questions, right? And it goes against the narrative. It goes against what has been widely believed, right? As far as where our capabilities are. And I've always said there's no proof that we as human beings have been able to reverse engineer the tech. Because when you go back to Bob Lazar, he says they hadn't cracked it in '89. You go to Lakatsky, he says as of 2016, they still hadn't figured it out. So that takes almost 99% of the chance that what we're seeing as man-made technology out the window. And then on top of that, the fact that we might be in some sort of actual conflict with the phenomena, with the presence. Yeah. I don't know what you walked out of the hearing with today, but when I saw that and they described what it was, it just fit right into everything that we've already talked about. And it just makes sense that we would be in some sort of conflict with them. There's been reports of it throughout history. And if we're doing it as recent as less than a year ago, we're probably still doing it today, which means we don't have this love and light agreement with these extraterrestrials. There's something else going on. There's something else going on. And like I said, more and more, hopefully we'll have someone dive into this video. I know Mick West will be all over it. A lot of other skeptics will be chomping at the bit to break it down and figure out what type of bird it actually is that we fired a missile on, or which wouldn't make sense, right? Which is why it's going to be laughable to see what debunkers come up with. If this is validated, I don't see a world where this can be debunked. And that's a stretch. That's putting a lot on the line saying that, right? But it'll depend on the chain of custody. I would hope that Congress presenting this video had done their due diligence to go back and make sure that this is something that they should be able to show, for one, and then validate that it came from within our government, for two, and kind of already have done those checks, right? So hopefully that's been done. I'm sure within the next week we'll find out if that's the case or not. But if it is what it appears to be, what can you say to that? And I don't know if you can argue with the fact that it really literally looks like we might, our U.S. military might be at war with UFOs. So not just clickbait on the thumbnail. This is really a perspective that we need to keep in mind at the very least. Is when we talk, let's go back to 3-Eye Atlas, right? Probably just a comet. But knowing what you know about potential back and forth conflict this entire time, going all the way back to Roswell, and I've talked about crash retrievals, or maybe not all crash retrievals. Maybe we brought some of them things down somehow, right? Maybe that the crashes are a result of some of this back and forth sort of conflict. Maybe it's a result of that. Now you got to start going back and looking at cases and thinking like, wow. And that's why I say, like Cash Landrum, we talked about on the last show, right? A lot of people thought that was government craft. I don't think that it is, but a lot of people say, okay, when we see these things being escorted by military craft, then we just assume that it's ours, right? That, I don't know if that flies all the time. Because if you have a threat, or if you have something that you deem to be a threat or an adversary, and it just shows up in your neighborhood, what are you going to do? You're going to dispatch aircraft to the location. And to the public, that might look like escorting, but it may be a reactionary sort of situation, right? Man, we're thinking this through, and it makes sense, right? This all makes sense. Just taking what we have. So with that being said, I still walk away from the hearing feeling like the hearing itself was way more than I expected. I want to applaud George Knapp once again for being awesome and taking advantage of the moment. I thought Lou Elizondo would do the same thing, having that moment and being able to kind of just put it all out there. It kind of came up short when I walked away from that hearing feeling like he could have done so much more than he did. And I was just so glad that we had someone like George Knapp in there. Now, obviously, George Knapp is friends with Bob Lazar, been friends for the last 40 years plus. Maybe we get a Bob Lazar at a future hearing. We know the Project Gravator, the movie is coming out with the director Luigi Venditelli, who we've had on the show before. And, you know, I would assume Bob Lazar, when that does come out, that he will be more public facing and accessible. I'm hoping. He's kind of hinted that that might be the case. And if that is the case, I'm sure George Knapp is wanting to line him up for some sort of congressional testimony. Maybe we'll get that in 2026, whenever this movie comes out. But future is looking very optimistic about the future, the UFO future. I think this is, you know, going to bring a lot. What happened today is going to generate a lot of conversation. You know, maybe we get some other shoes to drop. This video was unexpected. George Knapp said during the hearing they were aware of this video and they're glad that this finally came out. They didn't have access to it. So we're kind of moving down the right path. And hopefully we get a lot more. Asia disclosure, still waiting to see what this is. Still haven't seen that. We know Spielberg is working on his UFO movie at the current time. Likely going to be out sometime next year, hopefully, which is going to add to the conversation. This is going to, I think, start moving. And hopefully there's some things that we're unaware of that also pop up. Hopefully we don't find out at the last minute that 3i Atlas is part of this back and forth conflict we're having with these extraterrestrials, and it literally is the cavalry coming on in, right? Hopefully that's not the case, because now you got to think about it. And yeah, we'll go from there. And we're going to keep talking about this, right? The hearing prompted this show here today. Got a lot of thoughts going, which is how we have these conversations when you get some good, you know, content out there as far as the UFO topic goes. There's so many different conversations we could have. So we're going to do this and a lot more. You may actually catch us on Spaced Out Radio later tonight, kind of elaborating on the hearing itself. But this particular angle I wanted to do on this channel because it immediately spoke to me and it fit in with other data that we've already talked about and that is already out there. So with that being said, I want to make sure that we get to show the UFO video one more time before we get up out of here. All right, this is the Rhett Burleson presenting the new UFO video. Let's take another look. Here we go.
Takes such great courage to come forward, and we acknowledge that, and I hope that you see that we are taking that seriously. And so very thankful for what you're doing today. I'm also very thankful for previous witnesses that have come forward. I see Matthew Brown in the audience. He courageously stepped forward and was as a witness. I encourage everybody to look and seek his testimony. I want to thank the people that came in our first hearing: Ryan Graves, David Grush, David Fravor, and in our second hearing, Admiral Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, and Mr. Gold, and the many others that have come forward. We hear you, and it's time that we, enough is enough. It's time that we take action. Look, I'm not jumped to the conclusion that I believe that there are, aliens coming from another planet, but I'm open to that. And I think that it's our responsibility, especially when we're seeing that we have a government that is actively blocking information from us. Just last night, I tried to get an amendment onto the National Defense Authorization Act that fit in the germaneness of that bill to have UAP disclosure. And conveniently, it was named non-germane, mostly deemed by staff, not even an elected official. This is the kind of stuff that we repeatedly see. Last year, we were blocked by someone in House administration from being able to receive a full briefing from Arrow. So not an elected official, but someone in staff blocked us. And I've had it. Enough is enough. I want to cue up a video that I've been given. And as before it starts, I'm going to describe, this was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. That you cannot see that drone, and so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does. This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. So, Mr. Knapp, do you have you heard about events like this occurring? And what information might you have?
I have heard about events like this. I have heard about this event. Jeremy Corbell and I talked about it in one of our episodes a while back. We did not have the video, though. There are servers where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see, that the public hasn't been allowed to see. Occasionally, some of that stuff gets out in the wild and it comes our way. It should be going to you. The public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks.
All right, yeah. So that is the show. That is the show, and I can't wait to see I can't wait to see Sean Kirkpatrick being subpoenaed by Anna Paulina Luna. I fully believe that she's going to do it. It seems like she really, really wants to do it, and I think it really, really needs to happen, because you need to set an example of those who are willing to sit up and lie on behalf of this shadow government. Are you willing to put yourself personally on the line for this group that doesn't want the secret out? Right? Sean Kirkpatrick is a person, and are you willing to sacrifice yourself, your credibility, to keep this secret going? Where's the benefit that you get from doing that? And so I really hope they get him in there, and I am very confident, based on the type of conversations that Congress has been having, the kind of questions they've been asking. I feel that they know enough now about this whole thing to be able to ask the right questions. I'm sure questions will be submitted to them or suggested to ask Kirkpatrick, especially if George Knapp has anything to say about that or do with it. I'm sure the right questions will be asked. So please, let's get Sean Kirkpatrick in there. Sir, your day is coming. Sean, your day is coming, and you're going to have to make a decision if you are going to perjure yourself in front of Congress to protect the people in the back that are telling you to not say anything, or to keep the same line of, statements that Arrow has not received any credit. You came out with a report, an Arrow report, trying to cross things off the list, but you never showed how you got to those conclusions, which has always been a big problem with the transparency part of Arrow. where they say, yeah, we looked at this case and we deemed it to be this, not UFOs. And it's like, okay, well, what work did you do to get to that conclusion? And they never showed their work. So this will be a time where you're going to have to speak to that. I can't wait for that day. But a great day for ufology. I'm going to call it that just based on what we know so far. Obviously, my feelings could change down the line. But if what we got today is going to hold up, be verified fully, completely as authentic, then I think we have probably the best bit of UFO data coming from the inside. And then at the same time, I think we also have opened up that conversation to, are these things really friendly? And what type of relationship do we really have with these things? If it's very possible and likely in almost 100% almost that we are engaging with these things in an aggressive nature. That being said, that means there's a lot more to come. We're going to go ahead and talk about that and a lot more. So I want to thank everybody for coming on in. It has been an awesome show. Can't do it without you guys. Let's go ahead and flip through. And then we talked about these cases, right? These are cases. If you want to know more about these cases, go back and watch the previous show that we did. I think it was the last show, the Alien Invasion show, where we talked about the Cass Landrum. We also talked about Fred Valentek, and we played audio from air traffic control where he spots a UFO, and then you hear some metal scratching sounds, and he's never seen or heard from again. So assuming that this engagement with the UFO is the reason why he's no longer with us or here to speak. So definitely want to make sure you go back and watch that show. Also, we talked about the Colares Brazil UFO flap from the 70s, 1977, where these things came in and did some bad things to people. Also, we talked about one of the more recent cases, which was the Pelicaras, up in Peru, the face pillars, and that whole situation where, once again, the phenomena is doing something negative to humanity or to human beings, right? I think all this stuff ties together, and we'll make sure that we revisit this stuff. With that being said, we have we're going to wrap the show up. We got other shows on this channel. Make sure you subscribe. If you're here live, if you're here lurking, if you're here on Team Replay, we have a lot of stuff that we do on this channel. We have a lot of great conversations. We have a lot of different shows, as you see right here, that you can catch right here on this channel. A lot of good stuff going. We're still on the ground level here, and we're growing. So great time for you to come on in and become part of the team, part of the family. Also, we have our memberships, and I got to give shouts out once again, because the memberships are how we make sure that this thing goes. So let me shout out our members once again. We have Maggie M10, Leanne Bridges, Dean Unley, The Beekeeper, Polly Rotterman, Miss Catherine Jones, Deb from Sacramento, Wes Decker, Ann Joanne, Emperor Penguin, Frankie B, Amy, Laura Dominguez, Moody Mungle, Mel WD40, President Zaddy, Lulu Bell, Richard Minnick, Archon Jackpot, Matt Hector, Eternity Eternal, Thirsty, Deb D, Twiggy, Poncho Zort, and T-Bone. A lot of awesome people who have stepped forward, got memberships. If you are interested, you can get one by clicking the description, and you should see the link there. You can become a social soldier today. Help make sure that we can raise the bar here at the Social Dig. We will continue bringing the UFO topic here, plus a lot more. Stay tuned. It has been another awesome show. Make sure as well that you lock in the phone number. The Social Dig late night calling show will be back. I'm not sure what day we're going to do it. It's going to be a day coming up soon here. The call-in line is 856-843-3444. That's 856 the dig. If you're outside the United States, same number, just dial 001 first. 001-856-843-3444, or that's 001-856-THE-DIGG. Lock it in your phone. Program it in. Put it under Social Dig or Mr. Rob G. Either way, you can call, leave your experience at any time. We'd appreciate it. You can call just to say hi sometimes. Sometimes it's the cool thing to do. With that being said, I'm going to get up out of here. You'll see another show posted soon here on the Social Dig. Also, don't forget, we should be doing a show later tonight on Spaced Out Radio where we'll talk more about the hearing and hear other people's thoughts about what they thought about the hearing as well. And who knows, it might be a little fiery tonight. We'll see. With that being said, guys, have a great rest of your night. I'm going to get up out of here and we'll talk soon. Take care. Welcome to the Social Shop, courtesy of the Social Dig. I am Mr. Rob G, and we are bringing you exclusive gear, and tonight's no different. We have Humanity t-shirts, the positive progression of humanity. Yes, you can go out into the world and proudly show everyone what humanity means to you. $32.99. And remember, if you're a social soldier, you get an additional 20% off the price. That's right. Being a social soldier gets you an additional 20% off. And keep in mind, depending where you are in the world, shipping fees and taxes will be applied. Bringing you exclusive gear right here at the Social Shop on the Social Dig.